All right, guys, so this is a freshly rolled slab. Those of you that are full remote, again, like I was saying, you're going to get these pieces pre-cut. You'll have to retrim and smooth them a little. But this is a basic template for a decent-sized mug. So we have I have a few samples up here of previous student work. You can see this student enjoyed video games and added that as their applique holiday theme. Cousin of Tentacles. You can see they had all the little nubbins on here, little suction cuppies. And these slabs can be adjusted in shape by pushing out on them if you keep them slightly flexible. These are all made with this same template. Isn't it cute? Oh my God, he's so cute. Look at that. It's Ben Endersby's. You gotta finish it. Alright, so I'm going to cut my pieces out here. So those of you that are not full remote, you'll be doing this in class. I would do it for you guys too, but it took me almost an hour to set up 10 of these. So, I mean, answering emails at the same time and whatnot. But, feasibly, I can't really cut 120 of these. I'll help out when you guys are in class, though. Now, you want to make sure when you have your slab that it doesn't get stuck to the table. So, as you're working, you either want a piece of fabric underneath this, or, making sure that you're not squishing it too hard and that it's not too wet. So I have my wall of my mug and my base of my mug here. Now what we need to do is assemble these together. We're going to talk about handles another day, but I just want you guys to understand how this works. So we're in slab construction here. And the slab construction you guys have done just required your slab to stay flat for your tile. This we have to bend, but we want to attach this so the edges end up nice and straight. You can see this is pretty straight here. We don't want it to do what I call blarping, where you get this little curve here because it's sagged on itself. Well, no, actually a blarp is when you push out too hard. This is a sag. All right, so we want to try and make the edge as crisp and clean as possible. If I go to attach this slab around the outside of this circle, what will happen is because it's so wet, it'll already start to have that bend. So what you're going to want to do when you get your slabs is, one, smooth them out on both sides because it has a really fine texture on it from the canvas, from rolling it. And then you want to hair dry it for a minute or two. If you are remote, you can just let it kind of sit out for a little while and stiffen up. But we want to make sure that it's not super flexible, but when we bend it, we don't want it to crack. It might crack a little bit, and that we can get rid of. But we don't want it to fold in half and snap. So knowing that, understand that this mug is going to have sags in it. It's not going to be perfect. However, those of you that want to make your mug go more oval shape, like the Mike Wazowski or the cow, don't try it as much because we want to stretch it. So what do we do when we attach one piece of clay to another? We score and slip. So we're thinking that this slab is going to go around the outside of this circle. So we're going to want to put score marks around the outside of the circle here and on the inside edge, not the bottom. And again, when we do score marks, this is not okay. This is not okay. I don't want to see those little perfect X's. I want you to rough up the surface. But do not cut through the edge. If you're that's not okay. Because when you go to bend it, it's going to split. Hopefully mine doesn't split too much, but, mistakes were made. So we really just want to kind of tap and scratch and scribble. Basically, I just do curve marks all over the place. Time's sake, I'd probably do a little bit better, but, right now. This, I usually kind of tap, tap, tap at angles. Where did my knife go? Where's the knife? Ah, got it. You would do this with your carving tool. I kind of just tap the knife and just kind of rotate the circle in my hand a little to kind of get the crisscrossies over each other and overlapping repeatedly, not evenly. Again, not slicing through, but giving a good dent in that surface. Now we would add slip. I think my slip might be a little dry. Now I usually add slip around the circle because we're not going to use this whole slab. Inevitably, we are going to have to trim it to fit. Slabs love to stretch. They're never perfect. This is not from a potter's wheel or machine, so we got to keep that in mind. So I'm just going to stand my slab up here, hold it gently, bring my circle into that, push on those score marks, and then I'm going to just kind of like run my finger along the bottom edge here to get that stuck. And then I'm going to bring one side in and make that stuck. Now, with this other side, you can see it's overlapping. So what we're going to do is trim that to fit. Now, you're probably like, well, how am I going to know how much to trim? Leave it like this, and then you take your carving tool right on that inside edge. You're going to put your tool right up here, starting at the bottom, and just make a mark going all the way up. That way, when you unfold it, you'll see a line. And that line is what we'll trim off. You hold the wall, trim straight down. Boop. Then we're attaching these two edges together. So we got to score and slip again. So time's sake, I'm not going to do perfect score marks here, but score marks up the side. Take a little of our slip, put it on one side. So score ball, slip one. We're going to gently put this together so we're not stretching it out too much. And kind of bend it into itself. And push that other edge down. We didn't push all the way to get that attached. Okay? So that's what I call tacked on. It's scored and slipped, but we didn't blend anything yet. So we're going to have to blend several parts here. So we want to blend the bottom and the outside seam and this seam here. We'll get to the inside seam soon. So usually what I do is I do the bottom one first. It's super easy. You could take your popsicle stick if you want, or if you have a wood modeling tool, you can use that. Your rib would work just fine for this too. Don't just use a sponge, because that's just going to be water, and you're going to have to push too hard to get it to be smooth fully. But once you're done smoothing, you can gently use a sponge on it. So that's, I don't see that seam anymore. That's our goal. Because if we see the seam and we don't fix it, our mug's going to leak. Now I want to address the outside seam here. So to do that, don't do what I'm doing here, because if your mug is really soft, it's going to collapse. If it's a little stiffer, you can. But we want to kind of, what I call butter this. So we're going to go back and forth, kind of like you're putting butter on bread. And that seam is gone. I mean, it's probably a little bit scratchy looking. We'll smooth that out. However, with slab, if you warp it out or push on it, that seam is definitely going to open back up again. So the obvious thing is, don't do that. If you are making it so your mug stretches, I will help you guys with that a little more individually, but I can try and show you a little bit here. Just know that your seam might pop open, but we can patch it once you get the shape you want. So now we want to smooth this inside seam right here, the vertical one. Same thing as we did on the outside, but make sure that your hand's supporting on the opposite end here. So there's always something holding it down. What you don't want to do is where you've blended, this shouldn't be super thin. It might thin out a little bit, but I shouldn't see super thin areas and much thicker here. If that happens though, you guys can add a little clay, like a really, really soft coil all the way down and blend it in. Sometimes some seams just won't go together, and we do add like a little soft worm of coil on there. Speaking of, we got to put one down there. In here, I don't know if this will work. All right. In here is a big seam. And although we smooth it on the outside, when you put liquid in this, eventually it'll seep in and crack the whole mug. So we need to make sure that we address that seam. So to do that, we're going to put the mug aside for a second, grab a chunk of clay. The great thing about this little coil we're going to add on the bottom is you do not have to score and slip, and you do not need to make a perfect coil. So what we're going to do, I can even take a little piece at a time. The key to this, your clay has to be wet. If it is not wet, you will destroy your project right now. You're going to barf it like I was just saying before. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. I know this noise is disgusting for a lot of people, but bear with me. I'm getting that water compressed into the clay. And then I'm going to just start rolling like little bits of coils here. You want this coil no thicker than a pencil. If you make it thicker, the bottom of your mug will explode. I don't want to see 12 pounds of coil down here, barely blended in and sloppy looking. You guys can do better than that. So I made a little worm here. You can see pencil. I'm going to just drop it in here. And then take my tongue depressor, popsicle stick, whatever. I'm going to just gently kind of guide it to the edge. If you can fit your hand in here to blend, your hands are your best tool, but you don't want to stretch the outside. So if you have larger hands, do not do this. So if your hand fits, you would use your finger and just kind of pat that coil. And mine like barely fits. So I'm just going to place this down for a second. And I'm going to hold my popsicle stick in here. Let's see if I can brighten this for you guys. Wait. Yeah. Oh no, Austin, man down. That's okay. I'll fix it later. All right, here we go. So I'm supporting this side and blending. Pretending that basically this jumbo popsicle stick is an extension of your hand. And you could see that one little coil goes a long way. It didn't get to all the edges, but you could see it got to a lot of it. Now that coil's not fully blended yet. It's blended as far as, making sure it's on there. But we want to fully blend it so it looks nicer. And if you missed any spots, just make another little coil, drop it in there, and blend it in again. But what you would do next to smooth that coil on the inside, you would grab one of the big brushes that you have. You're going to dunk that in water. Always support the opposite side and smooth that coil in. Now, this is where blarps happen. So you can see my edge is pretty straight here. I'm going to move this back up again. Hold on. Up. I shouldn't have gotten a white one. That was a poor decision. All right, so we can see that edge is fairly straight on this side. However, when I start to blend this in, if I push too hard on that coil and I don't support it, blarp, hold on, blarp. See, that starts to kind of come out that side there. That happens a lot when people put their hand inside and they're blending without supporting. I see a lot of people do this. Ooh! Now, that might be something you're going for. Now you know how to do it. So basically you blend without supporting it. So you can see the difference. Blarp, no blarp. So you want to try and avoid that because once you stretch it out, you really can't get it to go back. You can try and force it in, but clay does not really contract well. It loves to stretch out. And you don't want it to look too crummy. Inevitably, some of these things might happen. Nobody's perfect. But we want to try and avoid it as much as we can. So that's attaching your slab to your base to make your base of your mug. If you want to adjust the shape now would be the time to do it. So if you want your mug to go outward, like that cow and like that Mike Wazowski, all I am doing here right now, you guys can see on the video, see how it's starting to stretch out, is I'm taking my finger, you can see the only one that's wet here, and I'm just petting the inside with that one finger. Just gently, a little bit at a time. If you try to stretch it too quick, it will break. And you see here how I'm pulling in this top. I'm trying to encourage it to curve more. Now you can see that that's starting to get that curve that you might want. Your top might look all jacked up when you're done curving it, but just remember, we can trim this if you want it shorter, and we're going to use a metal rib and smooth everything out. So, once you make your base of your mug, do not let it dry out. You need to then attach your applique portions, and those might be more individualized. I will go over handles another day, but just remember, do not let your mug dry out until we are done attaching a handle. And never pick up a mug by the handle until it's fired at least once. If you do, you'll pick up a handle and the mug will not come with it. Even if your corners live really well. Don't test it. I've had people test it and it's fine once, they pick it up again, the mug fell on the floor. So, let's not do that. All right, that's mugging.